Thanks for getting on to the Wednesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is the second video of today. I've just recorded a Hurricane Beryl update, so I would encourage you, if you're interested in knowing the latest with regards to Beryl, its impacts on Jamaica and beyond, then have a look at that video that has been previously uploaded before today's video, so you can find that on the YouTube channel. El Nino is gone, and obviously we anticipate the development of La Nina. But what's interesting is that the progress of developing La Nina has been much slower than much of the models anticipated. You can see here, this is the CDAS Nino region 3.4 index temperature anomaly, showing that the temperatures have leveled off at around 0. So it means that we are still in a neutral phase of Enzo at the moment here. So certainly La Nina is not here yet, and it is not driving the pattern across the planet at the moment either. And as I've said already before, it can be very difficult this time of the year to go by any particular teleconnection in terms of a driver to a particular weather pattern. A lot of the time, quite often, sea surface temperature anomalies and also soil moisture content can have influence on driving a particular pattern. Dry soils can encourage high pressure, wet soils sometimes can, I think anyway, encourage lower pressure in certain parts of the world. The Indian monsoon is well and truly kicked off. It is slightly ahead of schedule now, actually, and we are seeing also Hurricane Beryl became a record-breaking early Category 5 hurricane, obviously, moving through the Caribbean Sea. Obviously, there's plenty of content on the channel with regards to Beryl, so check that out, as previously mentioned. But also, this is an interesting tweet here by our friends at World Climate Service, showing that, we'll enter a new round of cooling soon, but so far, transition towards La Nina has been much slower than anticipated by the seasonal models. During the springtime. ECMWF and the CS5 is an exception. It's been right on side so far. So this is the ensemble mean forecast for Nino region 3-4, which is obviously the main region for measuring Enzo, whether it be a warm phase or a cool phase. And you can see that it has been fluctuating here at around the neutral so far. Most models indicate that we do see a negative anomaly weekly so during the course of July, and then it progresses further in August and September, as seen by this graphic here. You can see daily Nino region 3-4 index here is actually sitting ever so slightly above. Then the ensemble mean 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies here. You can see that we will start to see, as we go forward, the increase in easterly trade winds, which should allow upwelling of those waters in the eastern equatorial Pacific, and therefore we should start to see Nino region 3-4 coming down in terms of temperature anomaly. This is the upcoming 7 days of the GFS control run. Now, I don't often show the control, but I'm going to show you anyway today. And you can see here, this is looking down over the northern hemisphere, and we've got a standout cooling average across the heart of the North American continent here, with heat, extreme heat, riding up the west coast, cool in Alaska. We've also got warm underneath here, so we've got this kind of horseshoe of heat extending from the Pacific Northwest down around the bottom of the plains and up the eastern side of the United States here. Warm across much of Canada, if you notice here, where it's been very cool and wet across the prairies in recent weeks. And look at Europe. We've got firmly below average temperatures, UK, Ireland, and much of Western Europe. We've got heat in the east of the continent. Looking at the CFSV2, this is the rainfall anomaly over the next 7 days. You can see here, largely averaged above average rainfall across the UK and Ireland here. If you notice, we've got slightly drier across Ireland and Northern Ireland here, if you notice as well. Into week 2, we've got a swathe of wetter than average slicing through Ireland, Northern Ireland, and across the heart of the UK. Slightly closer to average in the south, slightly drier than average across the northwest, if you notice. And then as we move towards the period 17th through the 24th of the CFSV2, we've got a wetter northwest, drier across the bulk of England and Wales. Looking at the all-important temperature anomaly over the next 7 days, and the CFSV2 is firmly below average. And the reason for that is if we look at the 850 or the 500 millibar pattern, we've got quite a deep trough anchored over the northern UK here, encompassing all of the UK and Ireland. We've got a very flat zonal flow at the moment. We've got a lot of systems riding in from a west to northwesterly direction. Outbreaks of rain, windier, unseasonably windy conditions, particularly so later today and into tomorrow. We are going to have an even tighter squeeze in the isobars than what we've already got. So therefore, we should see almost borderline gale blowing across the north during the course of tomorrow. But notice the flip around as we move towards week 2. So this is the 10th through the 17th. You can see here the low to the west, high to the east, and we should have a better chance of seeing warmer than average conditions moving in from a south or southeasterly direction. If we skip on to the ECMWF, these are the 850 anomalies here in terms of temperature, and you can see that as we go through the next several days, we've got the high over the central North Atlantic here, we've got the trough to the north, we're seeing a northwesterly airflow, and the 850 temperatures or 5,000 foot level temperatures are considerably below average. We do flirt with slightly warmer than average across the south, if you notice, as we move through Friday and into the early portions of the weekend, but then we just anchor that chilly north to northwesterly flow through the course of the weekend, and even into the beginning of next week we hold on to this cooler than average at 850 situation here. Look at Europe, it's warming up, and as we see the pattern change and an area of low pressure moving towards the western side of Ireland and the UK, we're keeping an eye on that warmth over much of mainland Europe here, getting drawn into the eastern side of the circulation, so that flow around this area of low pressure should encourage some warmth to then lift into the UK and Ireland. The question mark is, does it hit and hold? I'm not overly optimistic about that, but we will have to wait and see. It looks as if we do have changes taking place mid to late next week in terms of something a little bit warmer. Let's look at the overview chart then of the ECMWF, and you can see that area of low pressure kind of swinging to the north of the UK. Pressure fairly low at around 985, 84 millibars here, and it's the combination of this fairly deep area of low pressure, but in terms of climatology this time of the year, versus a 1025 stretched out high between the eastern side of the United States and the west of Europe here. We've got this tight gradient, strong jet, stronger than average, racing across the portion of the North Atlantic here, and that jet is going to simply roar right across the UK during the course of Thursday, and therefore we are going to see the potential for gales, certainly on the coast, but even in areas exposed, inland areas, we may see for a time gale force winds. Look at the mess, the frontal system associated with that low, then going to be crossing Europe. That is likely to trigger more flash floods, damaging wind, large hail, plenty of lightning. We just continue to see this continued cycle repeat of the pattern that we've seen for several weeks across central areas of Europe here. And obviously, when you build heat, you increase instability, and therefore we could have some pretty severe weather to speak about in parts of, even the Low Countries, certainly Germany, the Alps, into Croatia, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland. This is a very, very active pattern in terms of instability within the atmosphere. And even here across the northern UK in particular, gusty winds, those showers are likely to contain some thunder and lightning, possibly some small hail as well, as that wind roars across. Then as we play into the latter half of the week, that area of low pressure kind of scoots on to the east, and then we find ourselves embedded within a cool northwesterly airflow. But you notice here, area of low pressure seen by the ECMWF sitting anchored between Scotland and Denmark, pulling in some fresh air from the northwest, but also some very heavy persistent rain is seen by the model during the first half of the weekend here. So we need to monitor that one. That could be a rather dismal day, to say the least, especially the further north you go over the UK. Then as we continue to play through, we're keeping our eyes on this area of low pressure moving in to perhaps more southern areas, northwestern France, for example. The exact position of this area of low pressure will remain to be seen, but certainly this is a rather unsettled mid to late week across the UK through the course of the weekend, and then hopefully during the course of next week we will see some changes taking place. And those changes come as, and yeah, I know another area of low pressure is moving in from the west, but with building warmth over the continent, we should start to at least import something a little bit warmer from the south as we move towards the middle portions of next week here. So yeah, it's quite a dynamic situation here, and I'm going to strive to continue following this dynamic pattern as we go through the rest of this month and the rest of this summer. Certainly, summer is turning out to be rather cool during the first half of the season. Anyway, we'll wait and see how the second half of the summer pans out. But are you disappointed so far? Are you missing the heat? Are you wanting some 25 to 30 Celsius warmth, or are you enjoying this fresher feel so far? I also got a tweet earlier on by Richard Trott saying that the QBO, or the quasi-biennial oscillation, has now flipped westerly. That's the first time the winds within the stratosphere over the equator has now flipped to westerly, and we'll wait and see what implications that may have later down the road in terms of winter season as well. And we will actually begin to start talking a little bit about future conditions as we go through the remainder of this summer and into the autumn. We are going to start touching on winter, so stay tuned for that as well. But it's busy times here on the channel. We're looking at not just local but global weather. The live stream will be back this Sunday at 4 p.m. as per usual, looking at all things global. And I hope you can stay tuned, like and subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow with more. Be sure to check out the Beryl update that has been released on the channel as well, so stay tuned for that. Bye for now.